Thank you very much. I don't want to recap the wonderful presentations we've had because I think they've all been quite unique and have taken us from the quite global theoretical sort of perspective right down to the very local, and I've greatly enjoyed today, so thank you very much to UNSW for organising this. Diversity, we've been talking about various ways of looking at it, various definitions. It's a reality for a city like Sydney, and I don't think it's a question of do we have diversity, it's about how do we embrace it and make it into a strength rather than work against it and perhaps go down a path like other cities have where it's more of a problem. We're a global city, we're a diverse city, it's actually part of our strength. So today's been quite heartening in terms of how we harness that and move forward. I wanted to just focus on a couple of the presentations today from the housing lens, which is something that I've worked in for a while. There are a couple of things that I have been thinking about today. One of them is our suburbs and the other is our city. In terms of our suburbs, the second presentation that had those pictures of the big open spaces on the estates was a reminder to me of the situation in our suburbs. We often see it from headlines in the Telegraph, which are mostly negative, unfortunately. There's about 140,000 social housing properties in New South Wales, and a third of those are concentrated on estates. So they're big communities, and they were built at a time when the planners may have thought Radburn was best practice, good design, whatever. Today we look back and we see concentrations of disadvantage. We see communities that are distant from employment opportunities, communities that are distant from transport, and communities that are really doing it quite tough in their local area, mainly with the support of community development workers and local initiatives, but really they are in quite difficult circumstances. The question is, how do we make those into vibrant, sustainable, diverse communities? One of the reasons that they're polarised is their distance from opportunity, and that takes us to Sydney. I came back earlier this year from completing a Churchill Fellowship, and I went to Singapore and to Hong Kong and to the UK and to the US, and that was an incredible opportunity to see how state housing authorities in those cities, all of them global cities, all of them facing an affordability crisis, are actually managing with the demand for social housing. And I couldn't look at that without looking at what's happening in terms of affordability in home ownership and the private rental market and what other opportunities there were, because social housing is downstream. It's a reaction to an unaffordable city and the need for people to have a home. So those cities gave me examples of many things not to do. They are incredible cities like Sydney, but there isn't a diversity of housing in the inner ring. The inner ring, their inner rings have become so unaffordable that even the workers in the state housing authorities that I was meeting with could not afford to live in those cities. They were commuting 1.5 to 2 hours a day each way in order to work and to provide essential services so that those global cities could function, but they and their families couldn't afford to live in those cities. And I've come back, and the questions for me are not what can we do with social housing, because that's downstream and it's fairly limited in the space that we can operate within there, but up at this end, how do we make Sydney affordable so that it can have diverse housing and diverse tenure types, so that we can have diversity of people living and working in the city, and so we don't have people having to live on the fringes, isolated from the wonderful opportunities of this global city. And today I think we've heard of various possibilities and examples and lots of innovative thinking about what we can do. But they are the big questions that I think I get out of today. Can a global city be affordable? And how can we make that so in terms of housing? Can a global city accommodate diversity? And how do we do that in a sustainable way? Thank you.